Welcome to Break the Loop. This is the place where shadows transform into personal power. Here we break the loop, shift timelines, and step into the highest version of ourselves. And today, we're stepping into the heart of this entire journey, the shadow. If you've ever felt like parts of you are hidden, misunderstood, rejected, or out of your control, this episode will change your life. Because to break your loops, to shift your identity, to rise into your highest timeline, you must understand the shadow, not as something dark or dangerous, but as the part of you that was never allowed to exist. In this episode, we uncover what the shadow truly is, how it forms, why it protects you, and how it becomes the architect behind the emotional loops that shape your reality. The shadow isn't the dark part of you, it's the hidden part of you. It is everything you had to push away in order to survive, belong, or be loved. Imagine yourself as a full, whole being, expressive, emotional, intuitive, powerful, vulnerable, alive. And then imagine that certain parts of that fullness were met with disapproval, discomfort, punishment, or silence. You learn to push them down and hide them. This is the birth of the shadow, the emotional truth stored in darkness, the exiled self, the unexpressed self, the forbidden self. It holds your unmet needs, your suppressed emotions, your buried desires, your hidden strength, and your untapped power. You are not scared of your shadow. You are scared of the consequences that once came with expressing your full self. The shadow begins in childhood, long before you understood emotions. You learned unspoken rules: don't be too loud, don't be too emotional, don't need too much, don't talk back, don't cry, don't show anger, don't show vulnerability, don't ask questions, don't challenge authority. You learned what created connection and what created disconnection. Because every child needs love to survive, you shaped yourself around the behaviors and traits that protected that love. If being quiet kept the peace, you learned silence. If being helpful brought approval, you learned over-responsibility. If being invisible kept you safe, you learned to shrink. Slowly, the authentic self becomes divided. One part becomes the adaptive self that the world sees, and the other becomes the shadow self that holds everything you had to hide. The shadow doesn't form because you are wrong. It forms because you needed love. Your shadow has one primary function: protection. It does not care about your goals or your future. It cares about survival. The shadow suppresses emotions that were once dangerous to express, controls reactions to prevent pain, records emotional memories to predict threats, and repeats behaviors that once kept you safe, even if they now limit you. The shadow is the emotional immune system, always scanning for danger, replaying old patterns, and preparing you for threats that might not exist anymore. The loops you struggle with today were built by the shadow to protect you. The tragedy is not that the shadow tries to protect you, it's that it keeps using outdated strategies to do so. Everything that could not be expressed safely becomes shadow material. Emotions that were discouraged, needs that were unmet, anger that wasn't allowed, sadness that was dismissed, vulnerability that was punished, strength that was shamed, boundaries that were ignored, opinions that weren't welcome, creativity that wasn't valued, desires that triggered guilt, and parts of you that others didn't understand. The shadow contains both your pain and your power. Your voice, your authenticity, your bravery, your clarity, and your inner truth often live in the shadow. The shadow is not a place of weakness. It is a storage room of everything you abandoned to stay loved. In adulthood, the shadow shows up through your reactions and your patterns. Adults don't have shadow problems. They have childhood strategies running their adult life. It appears as people-pleasing, overthinking, avoidance, emotional numbness, shutdown during conflict, rage, controlling behaviors, overachieving, self-sabotage, difficulty trusting, choosing emotionally unavailable partners, fear of abandonment, fear of rejection, fear of being seen, not asking for help, taking responsibility for everyone, and feeling like you must earn love or safety. These are not flaws. They are strategies your younger self created to survive. Every reaction that feels bigger than the moment is a shadow reaction. Every pattern that repeats is a shadow loop. As you grow, your shadow develops archetypes, emotional survival identities built from your childhood environment. Some of the most common include the pleaser who avoids conflict by meeting everyone else's needs, the ghost who disappears when emotions get intense, the performer who earns love through achievement, the controller who manages everything to feel safe, the protector who walls up to avoid being hurt, the fixer who takes responsibility for everyone, the runner who escapes intimacy, the overgiver who gives too much to avoid abandonment, the doubter who constantly questions their worth, and the lone wolf who handles everything alone to avoid disappointment. These archetypes shape how you move through the world, but they are not who you truly are. They are emotional masks. The shadow does not remember events. It remembers emotional states. It doesn't care about what happened. It cares how you felt when it happened. The shadow stores emotional states like fear, confusion, shame, guilt, abandonment, powerlessness, rejection, overwhelm, invisibility, disappointment, and anger. When something in the present triggers even a small trace of that old emotional state, the shadow reacts instantly as if the original experience is happening again. This is why your reactions sometimes feel too big. They belong to the past, not the present. The shadow reacts from memory, not from reality. Emotional loops are simply these memories repeating. Your identity, the story of who you believe you are, is often shaped more by your shadow than by your truth. You grow up believing ideas like, I must be strong, I shouldn't need anyone, I'm too sensitive, I'm not enough, I'm too much, I don't deserve more, I always attract the same people, or I always get abandoned. These are shadow identities built from emotional patterns and experiences. They are not your true identity. The more you live from your shadow identity, the more you repeat shadow loops. Identity is the doorway to reality. When your identity is shaped by the shadow, so is your timeline. Your shadow anchors you to emotional timelines, versions of reality shaped by your wounds and past experiences. A timeline is not a mystical concept, it's an emotional frequency. When you are stuck in a shadow-driven timeline, everything feels repetitive. The same emotions, the same relationships, the same triggers, the same cycles. Your shadow keeps you in these timelines because they feel familiar. Integration lifts you into higher timelines by changing your emotional baseline. The more shadow you reclaim, the more reality you reclaim. Shadow integration is emotional ascension. You recognize your shadow through emotional intensity and repetition. Signs include emotional spikes, emotional shutdown, judgment of others, projection, overreaction, underreaction, collapsing into old states, feeling like a child, needing to control, needing to disappear, irritability, jealousy, resentment, or catching yourself asking, why am I feeling this so strongly? When something feels intense, repeated, or confusing, it is usually your shadow. The shadow communicates through intensity and patterns. When you become aware of it, you interrupt the loop. Your shadow becomes your power the moment you stop fighting it and begin listening to it. Your anger reveals your boundaries. Your fear reveals your desires. Your sadness reveals your needs. Your jealousy reveals your longing. Your numbness reveals your exhaustion. Your shutdown reveals your overwhelm. Your people-pleasing reveals where you don't feel safe. Your shadow contains your voice, your truth, your intuition, your worth, your strength, your boundaries, and your authenticity. Shadow integration is not about becoming someone new. It's about reclaiming the parts of you you abandoned. This is how the shadow becomes power. This is how you break loops. This is how you shift timelines. This is how you rise. Now that you understand the shadow, what it is, why it forms, and how it shapes your loops, you're ready for the next step. In episode 4, we begin shadow tracking and emotional echo work. This is where you learn to spot the exact moment the shadow takes over so you can break loops in real time. Your shadow reveals the key to your freedom. Every shadow holds a piece of your gold. Clarity is the beginning of freedom. This is one of the most powerful tools of the entire series. This concludes episode 3 of our 15-part transformation series. You now understand the true nature of the shadow, not as darkness, but as the part of you that was never allowed to exist. In the next episode, we'll begin tracking your shadow patterns with clarity so you can break loops from the inside out. Until then, break the loop, shift the timeline, and become your higher self.